Barav.
Yes.
Nowadays, many people in the Torah world have adopted a certain form of dress, especially in the more Charedi communities. Is it appropriate to follow that style or to dress in that sort of way?
It is certainly not inappropriate. I don't think there's anything inappropriate about it. The reason given by people in Haredi communities who dress that way, things that I have heard myself, have to do with a kind of uniform, as it were, and creating a sense of belonging to a certain group of people, a certain community. Is there something to be said for that? Yes, I think one can make an argument for that, although one does not have to follow slavishly a particular style, or one doesn't have to fit in with what everyone else is doing. The main thing is that a person, that Talmid Chachamim, should be seen to be dressed, as we said before, in a manner which is, in a style which is respectable, presentable. It should be modest. It should be clean, and therefore, frequently this will mean that he will not be dressed like the common people, like most people, like many other people. So he will look somewhat different. Exactly how that difference is to be achieved, that how one defines the parameters of this dress, cannot be specified. But it is obvious. It's like many things. It's hard to describe, but you know it when you see it.
Rabbi?
Yes.
In the case of the Haredi world, doesn't the black and white type of dress sort of almost symbolize the desire to act as though we were in exile, oppressed, not in Eretz Israel? And also there's a climate factor, that some of their dress seems completely at odds with something reasonable for the Middle East.
Well, let's take the first point first. I'm not sure I understand why black and white clothing have anything to do with galuth or being in a state of mourning or something like that. It's not clear to me why you say that.
I thought that that's almost part of what the clothing symbolizes.
I don't believe that's necessarily the case. I've not heard people explain or describe that form of dress in that way for that reason. I haven't heard such a thing. It doesn't strike me as correct. I think it has to do with the more conservative, more formal dress code, for which I think there is something to be said. In other words, and it also obviously varies from community to community, from place to place, from country to country. But the idea that a Torah Jew should dress in a respectable manner, and also in a manner which is somehow even subtly different, if not more obviously different from the masses, there is definitely something positive in that. It helps the person to feel that they are separate, they are different. They don't belong to that group or that society or that culture. So, in my view, the practice of a young gentleman, a young man, let's say a Talmid Yeshiva, studying in Yeshiva, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, it's not that you can point to any halachic source, but I do not like that. I do not like that idea. I do not find that a positive or beneficial form of dress. It is. I think it is too similar to the way that other people who are very far from Torah dress. I think there is a purpose in being seen to be different and feeling oneself to be different. As you will recall, Rambam writes at the beginning of this perek, in Vichot De'ot, perek Hamishi, Rambam began by saying, "Kashem she'hacham nikar v'chochmato v'de'oto," just as a hacham will be recognizable by and he will stand out because of his chokhmah, his knowledge, his wisdom, v'de'oto, and his midoth. V'hu muvdal b'hen mishar ha'am, and he is different and separate from most people for these reasons. Kach zarich sheyeh nikar b'ma'asah, he should also be seen to be different by other actions and behaviors. B'ma'chalo v'mashkehu, in his food, his eating habits, or v'virlatho, or v'asiyat zaracho, or v'diburo, v'hilucho, or v'malbusho, or v'chikul devaro. So we see that amongst the various types of behavior and the ways in which a person appears in public is seen by others, and also I think, as I say, there's also a reflexive aspect to this. It's also it makes a statement to himself that I am not like those people. I'm different.
Rabbi? Rabbi?
Yes.
So I've long thought to myself that there seems to be something positive to religious people dressing in a distinctively religious fashion. In the case of Charedim, there's another aspect, being so monochromatically black and white for an entire large population. Having a child know that he will only dress in black and white from the time he's of a certain age until the rest of his life, it seems that there's something psychologically unhealthy about it. I've even mentioned to somebody that I thought it was a type of mass torture. In other words, if one is going to dress differently, fine, that's great. But why not add a little bit of color?
Let me tell you a story. Many years ago, I think at least 20 or probably even more years ago, there was a famous, it became famous in the religious online world. At that time, it was noted that a photograph had been taken of the Beit Midrash of Yeshivat Torah Wada'at in New York, a Charedi institution, generally speaking. A photograph had been taken of the Beit Midrash with many people sitting and learning, what have you, for purposes, I think it was of a calendar. They put out some calendar, perhaps for fundraising purposes. And everyone was wearing white shirts, except for one Bahur who was wearing a blue shirt. And what you understand, what you conclude from this fact is that it's perfectly possible and reasonable, on the one hand, that a Ben Torah, a Talmid Chachamim, should wear a blue shirt. There's nothing wrong with wearing a blue shirt. But in the Haredi community, which is which is constantly evolving and reinventing itself in many ways for various reasons. That which was once entirely acceptable, certainly in places like the United States. If you go back further in time, if you were to go back 30 years, 40 years, you would see many non-white shirts. But over time, in the Charedi world, the dress code became much more rigid and fixed, and it became the case that only a white shirt was permissible, was considered de rigueur, was considered to be proper. So that same photograph was used year after year. And one year, someone noticed that the blue shirt of this Talmid had been photoshopped and made white. It was the same photograph. You could see plainly it was the same photograph, but the blue shirt had become white. So for some time, it was considered okay by that yeshiva, by that Rosh Yeshiva, by the people who were responsible for the public imaging and brand naming. It was okay that they had a Talmid who was wearing a blue shirt, and probably before that time they had quite a few people wearing that kind of dress. But it eventually became considered, it's pasnish. This is not to be done. Does it have to be that way? No, it does not have to be that way. Is it true that a white shirt is usually considered more formal than a shirt which is something other than white? That is usually the case, yes. Not just amongst Jews, amongst all people. Generally, politicians, prime ministers, presidents, what have you, they tend to wear a white shirt, although there are, of course, exceptions to that rule, of course. But generally that's the case because it is considered more formal. So is there a concept of Talmid Chachamim being dressed as formally, as rigid, in such a rigid dress code always? It's not a halachic concept. It's not an essentially Torah concept, but it has become accepted practice and expected in the Charedi world. So many things have changed in the Charedi world over the years, and this is one more example. So I don't think that a colored shirt is a problem in and of itself. But if a person wishes to belong to a particular community where they're very, very, I would say even obsessed perhaps with such issues, then you have to fit. If you wish to fit in, then you have to follow these rules, even though they don't make any sense necessarily. In some ways, it's like many people or did in the past, and some people still do. They'll wear a face mask in a certain situation, not because they're really convinced it's necessary or wise or helpful, but because it's expected.
Maybe they should wear black masks if they really want to fit in.
Well, that's an interesting point. I'm sure if you somehow surreptitiously launch a campaign in the Charedi world that the face masks should be black and not chas v'shalom light green or pale blue or anything of the sort, and then you begin to produce them in large quantities and organize a system of distribution in the yeshiva world, I'm sure that you could make a nice sum of money. These things are the Charedi world is no without a doubt lends itself to these kinds of parodies and even sometimes ridiculous behaviors, but it's all coming from a positive place, from a position of wishing to protect, wishing to be different, different from things which are which are absolutely no question undesirable and things that should be shunned. Sometimes when one wishes to do such things, one goes overboard and one begins to act in a manner which is not, strictly speaking, rational or reasonable.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.